Because we went to 8-man football this year. 8-man football? Yeah. The very first year when you switch division with NHSA, it's like you're like at will. Like whoever will play you will play you. You don't have a set schedule with everyone in your division. So we've actually had 17
It usually says it right above your cursor. Right there. It's like it's over the box. That's pretty cool.
Which one's the camera remote? Do you know how to control the cameras?
Next year we not have a choice. So we only have ones on and the last
Or maybe it is that one. It's a camera stuff.
So like our last game of the season, I can't think of the name of it, but it's like a Christian account. Detroit. We're traveling 8 hours. First game is tomorrow, and it's in Florence, Wisconsin.
Look at that. Hi, how are you doing? Good to see you. Thanks for coming.
Yes. A couple capsules every week.
Meeting is called to order at 6 o'clock, 6:01. And Kathy, can you do a roll call, please?
Mayor Chapman?
Here.
Councilmember Furby?
Here.
Councilmember Halverson is excused. Councilmember Scanlon?
Here.
Okay, we have a quorum. Now, do we have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved, Your Honor.
Support.
We have a motion and support. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor? Aye, opposed, the agenda is adopted. Moving on to public comment, you have a limit of 4 minutes per person, and if you would like, yep, okay. Let me get my stopwatch ready.
Good evening, and thank you for your time. Thank you for letting me be here. My name is Amy Lurley. I own 725 North 1st Street and 404 South 3rd Street. My husband Glenn and I pay approximately $6,000 in taxes every year to the city. I want you to think about that. $6,000 from our table or medical expenses that we could be paying, we're paying to you. We need some common sense right now, and in this transition period, I can't emphasize it enough that some things I think need to take place, some of them being, have you as a council reviewed the city manager's job description? Have you reviewed your policies and procedures as it relates to the city manager and how you deal with the city manager and his staff? Have you reflected on your part in what has happened in these past weeks and months? We need some common sense. I'd like to see experience and some understanding of your role as a legislative body. There are more than 10 people, or approximately 10 people running for city council. And I would say to them, if you don't understand the basic principles of policy and governance, I would urge you to think long and hard about whether you are well-suited to govern our city. Policies are nothing more than decisions made in advance. You are making decisions in advance, or are you reacting to one complaint after another? This isn't about your neighbor, your longtime friend, your business interests, or some personal issue at hand. It's about the future of the city and all who live and work here. We need strong, capable leadership who are committed to the best interests of all of us. Now, Glenn and I pay those taxes happily. We choose to live here in Ishpeming, as do many, many people, obviously. We're paying you to be here for us. Having said that, I reviewed the 2022 audit, and it was embarrassing at best. 14 pages of findings. Seeing this audit, reviewing these findings, Grant Getchow, you are a god in my book. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Much, much better, and I applaud you for everything you are doing and all of the time you are putting into the city. I appreciate you so much. Thank you.
Okay, is there anybody else for public comment? Yes?
Can I reserve for an agenda item?
Sure. Just remind me, yeah. Okay, Kevin?
Kevin Corkin, 604 North Pine Street. Thanks for having me. Sorry, I'm running in between meetings here. But I just wanted to thank the council for allowing the Parks and Rec Commission to, really work well together. The last couple of meetings were some of the best ones I've attended. My 2 years on the Parks and Recreation Commission. I feel like we got a lot done and we were able to really come up with some really neat ideas, I think, for the campground and how we can better promote it and better make sure that's, fix a few things that I think will get more utilization out of that campground. And then also with the playground project, I think it was really neat to see the collaboration between all those that are on the commission So I just want to thank you for, letting the commission do their work and, listening to the commission and what they suggest to the council and, or at least considering it in your recommendations. And then I just want to talk about Partridge Creek Farm. I'm running in between meetings here, so I just want to talk about it now since I know it's on your agenda later on. Just want to share my support for Partridge Creek Farm, as well as, Partridge Creek Compost and any nonprofit that is here or doing work in the city of Ishpeming. There's lots of great things happening, and I just want the council to consider some of the things that you might not see with these nonprofits being in our city, such as all the full-time employees that work at these nonprofits. These are employees that live in our city, that are paying taxes in our city, and they're spending their money and doing business in our city. So I think it's, having lived and breathed nonprofits for 15 years of my life, I know the hard work that these staff members put in to the work. Many of them don't, they're not doing it for the money or the benefits. I can assure you that. They're doing it because they care and they care about the community. So just talking about Partridge Creek Farm in general, some of the other benefits that you don't see, well, you do see the grant money that comes in when Grant or, whoever else in the city is working on those grants. That's direct benefits, but some of the other benefits are, the free farm to school programming at Ishpeming Elementary School and Middle School. So those are, funds that are being funded through grants that the school districts themselves are not spending on programming for their kids. Plus just all the public beds and gardens that are available. And one thing that stood out to me that was really shocking was that there's 3 food assistant programs that Partridge Creek Farm accepts, and 75% of those that are attending their farm stand and getting food assistance, or 75% of people that are going to get food are doing so with assistance. So that was really a shocking number to me. So just want to share some of those neat benefits that you might not see every day with Partridge Creek Farm, and encourage continued support of all the nonprofits in Ishpeming. And lastly, thank you all for your service to the city and being on the council.
Thank you. Okay, is there anybody else that would like to speak for public comment? Last call for public comment. Is there anybody on Zoom that would like to? You can use the raise your hand feature. Last call. Okay, hearing none, we are now moving on to our items of business, starting with the Anderson Tackman and Company 2023 audit presentation. All right.
All right, start the clock, 4 minutes. We'll see if we can do it. I'll try to keep it short, but whatever questions you have, we can go there. I'll just start here. Much, did I say much? Much better audit than last year. I want to start there. Looking at page 5 of the audit report is the opinion. You have an unmodified opinion, so it means you complied with all the generally accepted accounting principles. It also says they're your statements, not ours, and we take a sampling of transactions. We don't look at every single transaction. Looking at page 17, when you roll the city up, you ended up with just over $36 million net position. 21 million is in business type activities, 15.1 in governmental activities. You'll notice that in the governmental activities, you have a 5.4 million deficit in unrestricted. That's really easy to pinpoint. It's coming from 2 things. It's, well, 1, but 2 places is your net pension liability, which is $2.8 million, plus the bond that you issued related to that debt. gets rolled into that number. So if you take that out, you're looking okay. And you're in the same boat everybody else is in that respect. The big player always is the general fund. So if we kind of look at page 78 and 79, along with the graph packet here, we'll kind of do it all together. The general fund did have a decrease of 218,000 in the current year, bringing your fund balance down to 924. And that's where if we kind of look at the graphs here, looking at the first one, what's that 5-year trend kind of look like? And you can see 21, there was a big bump. That's when you had the MERS bond came through. But other than that, you know, your fund balance has kind of been coming or going. But on the flip side is when you look at your budget, you had budgeted for roughly a $250,000 loss. So you actually came in $35,000 better than where you were at final budget side. Looking at the next graph, where's the money coming from? 55% is coming from state and federal sources. That in a way is skewed this year. And if you look at the next one, looking at the 5-year trend, you can see it clear as day here. So in 23, you actually got roughly 1.5 million from the state to help with your unfunded MERS liability. So that brought the revenues up. Otherwise, it would have been fairly constant. When we look at the expense side of things, you can see general government on the next one was 51%, but the next one actually is a little more illustrative of the general government went up significantly because that's where the expense for that 1.5 million was recorded. So what happened was the state gave you a grant for 1.5 million, you brought it in, and then it turns out and you pay it back to MERS. So it was a pure wash 1-for-1. When we kind of think of the pension plan, and we look at page 70.
Which page? 70, I believe you said.
Page 70. And just looking at the liabilities and how they're kind of flowing through, you can see in the current year, 1.7 million actually decreased your liability for MERS from 3 million down to $500,000. So that's really nice to see. You're making some headway there. Where the big liability still is on page 73, it's the Public Act 345 pension plan. That still has a $2 million liability. So that's where when you put the two together, you get the 2.5 that's showing on the financial statements. Any questions up to this point?
Just one and more for Grant probably. The Act 345 is probably better now than it was at audit time, correct? Because of market change or?
We've had a net increase in fund balance year to date. The market has gone way up and way down every month.
So it's still just,
It's gone up and down.
that's all I want to thank you.
Yep. Kind of looking at the utility funds, looking at page 24 is the actual detail, and then kind of looking at the sewer fund graph here. The sewer fund added to the bottom line in the current year. That's really good to see. And when you look at the chart, you can see, you know, it's holding its own, it's looking okay. No big concerns there like we used to in the past where we were trying to figure out how to get it out of the hole. So that one's looking way better. The water fund is looking good. You added about 800,000 to the bottom line there, so that fund is looking better. So that's where if you look at the back of the graph chart, you can kind of look at the 5-year trend in an actual number value. And a lot of it is you're getting federal and state sources coming through, you're paying bonds, you've done the projects that have kind of helped clean up a lot of the repair and maintenance you had in those systems that you've had in the past.
Do we see a, excuse me, do we see a, we took on Nagani as a customer. Do we see I'm hoping a positive, medium positive, a very positive addition in our income?
For 23, it was pretty much flat. You didn't see much of a change. I don't think you're gonna see, in 24 is probably where you're gonna see more of that.
Okay.
Coming forward. At this time, if you go back to in the back of the audit report, now we go over the 2 deficiencies that we had.
What page is that?
126. And it's short and sweet and easy this year. First one is, we helped put the report together. We notate it, here it is. And the other is, you were over budget in a couple spots, nothing that's concerning me, that, oh, you did a bad job budgeting. It just, there was a lot of moving parts to clean up last year. And if one wanted to look, you could look on page 66 for them. And a lot of that was just coming from timing of the budget amendments and getting things cleaned up. And it took Grant a while to figure everything out. I'm happy to say he has figured it out. You know, now it's working on the budget going forward. You know, you have good actual numbers. You have good numbers on a monthly basis that you're looking to make decisions on. Now it's a matter of taking that budget and projecting it to the future and looking at it of what can we do, what can't we do, how is this all gonna shape out? The caveat that I'm gonna throw out here is gonna be the same thing I said last year when I said, Grant's in here, he has a lot of stuff to clean up. Don't burn him out, don't overwhelm him. Same comment, but different context. Now that he's finance and interim city manager, don't burn him out, help him out. Because you don't want him to slide on the financials and get back to where you were. Not saying that he's going that way, so don't take it that way. But it's, there's only so many hours in the day, you don't want to burn him out.
I agree.
With everything else, so make sure you're trying to help balance that out as you're in the new city manager search going forward. Because you don't.
We've got a keeper here, so.
Yeah, you don't want to backslide, so, and then playing both roles, and you got 2 full-time jobs, that's a lot of work right now. So keeping that in mind, but yeah, he did a fantastic job from where we were last year to where you are now. So I feel way better presenting this audit than last year's.
Music to my ears.
Does anybody have any questions?
I think I do here. I think the biggest concern for me is how can we maybe iron it out in stone so we don't go back to where we were? I mean, that's a question for both maybe of you that, because you won't be here for eternity, so.
It's really about having people who have a financial background.
Right.
That's what it boils down to. I'm a very small to medium fish. There's lots of me out there. You just need people who can read through your general ledger and understand some basic accounting principles at the helm. And then you need a good finance person who's going to help you project.
Well, yes, there are finance people out there. But
Yeah, so-
not people that are as both qualified and as dedicated to.
Right, so I think you're in a little different position now than you were previously from that respect of, let's say Grant moves on or moves up, of you have a good starting point. You did with Jim, but
Right.
looking at, you can see how that position, that hiring of that position affects everything. So are you better off waiting to get the right person in the position than grabbing the best one that's available that might not be the best fit?
You kind of hit it right on the
Yeah.
head. And that's part of the reason why I said, let's clean our house a little bit first to get our ducks in a row. And the other thing, Amy was like she was reading from a speech I wrote her.
Yeah, she did, yeah. It's I've talked to her
But
about
that,
too.
she made a lot, I mean, it's just minor statements, but it made an awful lot of sense that we need to do our housekeeping.
I
And we
agree.
need to run like a business, not make the quick decisions. Try to make the right decisions.
Yeah.
And that, it cost us money to do things like that. Like some of our construction problems right now. If
Yeah.
that was done properly, we wouldn't be taking a financial hit because of our inadequacies to manually or visually look at these things. And I
Mike's,
think
please.
a lot of that has changed.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, a lot of that has changed
I agree.
already. So I think we're taking, some of your advice is already being underway, and certainly the rest of it, we need to follow it.
I agree completely. My next question, did you look at any areas of this audit that might potentially be kind of a guide where we might be able to cut some spending going into the future? Because we need to get back to having a really solid kind of balanced budget here without sacrificing services or our employees, so.
Probably one of from an operational standpoint, probably not. The biggest thing to look at is kind of looking at what projects are you doing and funding it, and it's more of a budget perspective.
Okay.
And a few years ago, I had this discussion with another city. And it's one of those things of budgeting conservatively, of saying, okay, here's the revenue pot we have, and starting there and saying, what can we afford? And then look from that standpoint, what can't we afford? And from that standpoint of, is that something we can cut? Or is that something we can find a new funding source for? And kind of starting with those fixed costs of saying, okay, where are we going? What is the best sources of stuff? going forward. So it kind of goes back to that budgeting standpoint of, okay, what can we afford with what we have coming in as revenue? And then using that as your jumping point of starting to look at expenses. So it's one of those things of, let's just say there's 5 commissioners and you want to do 5 projects, but you can only afford 3. Which of the 3 are you going to get the best bang for your buck? And or is there additional funding sources that you can get for those things? And looking at some of the decisions of how do we adjust the budget to afford what we want to do?
Okay. That brings me to my next question that I have written down here is, are we stable with the current debt that we have? We've taken on a lot of major projects. We partner with some community organizations on grant work and stuff like that. What is a stable amount of debt that we can actually handle as a city? And are we at that point? Have we crossed it, or do we still have wiggle room if other projects come available?
On this hand over here, you still have wiggle room. You still have capacity to issue some more debt. The problem over here is you don't want to overload the debt and suck all that cash, because what you gotta start thinking about is when you look at that additional debt, is you look at this year's budget and say, oh, well, we can do this $2 million project. We get a $2 million loan, our budget is good. But you have to look out a year, 2 years, 3 years and go, oh, we're gonna have to cut something to pay for this debt because you can't get out of the debt. And you don't wanna, in today's bond market, it's going the other way. So it's not like you're gonna wanna run out and refinance debt because you're gonna get a higher interest rate. So it's kind of back to that budgeting of, here's not only just looking at today's budget, but projecting out 1, 2, 3 years to figure that out. And especially with capital projects, you know, bigger projects, of doing a longer term budget plan of, we need to do this and this and this in these years. So one of the things I can pick on easily, and pick on's not the right word, but use as an example, is like DPW of, okay, we need a new front end loader here, we need a new sander here, we're gonna need a new, you know, this piece of equipment, and get it on paper so you can kind of trend and work through that of saying, okay, we need this, and this. Okay, how can we work on that so we can afford it when that day comes? You got the money or the room in the budget to buy it, and yet do other things and not wait until year 5 and go, oh, the sander's down, we need a brand new one, how are we gonna afford it? Where if you're looking at it now for 5 years from now, you can sock money away for the next 5 years so it's there when you need to buy it. And that's gonna be a harder thing in the budget, because on one hand, you're looking at, hey, I got fund balance I can use to pay money in the bank to pay for this project today. But you gotta keep in mind, hey, I'm earmarking that for this, and this in the future years, so we have the money to do it.
And and I think we've spent a lot of money recently on equipment, at least since I've been on council, and there are going to be inevitable things that come down the road. The one area we haven't spent money on, and I think we need to, is on a fire engine and getting to that point. So I'm kind of hearing that we kind of, and maybe I'm wrong, but we do have a considerable amount of debt out there right now, and that we are doing a lot of projects, but we may really want to pick and choose what we take on now.
You're gonna wanna pick and choose what you do going forward. I'm just looking here. If I can get to that footnote quickly. Yeah, I mean, you have a significant debt load. Is it alarming No, but on the flip side, you know, you don't want to get to the point where you can't issue any debt if something happens.
Yeah,
And planning ahead, especially if you're looking at a fire truck,
Well,
they are
yeah.
not cheap.
no, and they're like 2 to 3 years out, and we haven't even started that real process yet. So, you know, my concern is, you know, the longer we wait, the more those things are gonna cost going up. So I'm just a little concerned.
And
And also
they're-
asking if we have that capital to go for and do that and get the process rolling and hopefully get a grant or something back after too.
We don't have the capital for a fire truck, to purchase outright.
Right, I
But
understand
with some
that.
of these debt, the debt, it's important to remember your funding source,
Right.
and what, you know, projects. So, for example, like we've spent cash on DPW vehicles. We haven't loaned DPW vehicles.
Right.
We spent cash out of the motor pool fund, which collects vehicle rental revenues to pay for those vehicles.
Right.
So purchasing DPW vehicles really has no effect on a fire truck or
Which is
something like that.
kind of where I was going with my next question
Yeah.
was, is there bonding room out there or loan options out there that we could do that if we needed to? And are we in the immediate financial position where we could start that process?
But yeah, that's where the budgeting is. When you think of the budget, you're just not budgeting this year and next year. A lot of those things you want to roll out. We know the future's going to do this, but if you have somewhat of a plan of what you're going to need when, and then start planning now for like a fire truck, start looking at it now. Where can it go? What debt's going to fall off when? That could be
Yeah.
replacing that.
And with
Is
builds.
there other deals on fire trucks out there? Because there's some, you know, you look at it as maybe it's not a new one, maybe you have to do a used one. Maybe you don't get the A truck, maybe it's the B truck that you have to get. Or, you know, a lot of the different things, because there's such a lead time with some of that. Some of the places are offering deals where if you pay so much now, we're gonna knock X off the price.
Well, and I
forward.
think that's kind of where I was going with a lot of that is some of these builds are 2 and 3 years out, from what I'm understanding. You know, do we have the capital or at least the ability, if we need to take out a loan to get that process going or a bond or something?
And that's where looking at the funding source, if you're looking at it today for 3 years to 5 years from now, you're gonna be prepared for
Yes.
what's gonna happen versus, oh, well, we need a fire truck, we just gotta do a loan and, okay, now is that the best decision? Kind of going back to the board was saying a minute ago of not reacting, but planning out. So I think the big word is planning the stuff out
Right,
and not just reacting.
we haven't done that in terms of certain areas. DPW has, you know,
But we also have the millage for that fire
Our
truck.
fire truck
Right,
bill,
yes.
I think that we are discussing.
Anyway, I'm just trying to find just
A
as
little-
examples
yeah.
and where we are financially.
Do you think that our debt is, you stated that we're not in trouble in debt. Would you say it's average, Mike, like for a normal city our size, are we,
We have an investment grade S&P rating. We just went through a credit rating from S&P.
so that says we're in good shape?
We're okay.
Yeah. You know, the one thing that's different for you than pretty much, well, than anybody that I work on, but a lot of the places is you're one of the few places that got the MERS bond to help pay that debt off. So when you look at that, that's part of the budgeting piece of this is you don't have the big MERS payment, you offset that with a bond payment. So when you're saying debt, you have a different makeup of your debt because of that bond. Most places didn't do that. So that kind of changes the dynamics. On one hand, you've flattened out a lot of your future MERS payments, hope, knock on wood. Flatten that out where a lot of places are getting a lot more of this while it's in their actuarial contributions are going up, where you kind of hopefully flatten that out. So that should help you going forward. But that also changes what you can issue debt for because you did it that way. So it's a different mix, but looking at it, you're not bad. You're not in norm. Some places have less, some places have more. And you got to kind of look at it. What debt do you have? You know, you have a lot of debt in the utility system, but on the flip side is you've upgraded that system.
Exactly.
You almost have a full new system in some respects. How much were you spending on all the repairs and maintenance
And
versus the bond costs and treatment costs of that?
And that was one of my next question, or my question is, especially on that sewer fund graph, because we're going to be doing a rate study, and you want your operating expenses or your operating revenues just a little bit above your expenses when you're doing your thing. And if you look at the
Right.
graph, in 19 and 20, it was the exact opposite. You guys were
Exactly,
spending
yes.
more than you were taking in. And then you go forward, look at 21, 22, and 23.
Which is, yeah,
And
it's
you
getting
don't
better
want-
every year.
You don't want that big of a gap, but you want to get it, that's the base rate.
Yeah.
And then the projects are your per gallon rate. And there's been a big change. I mean, the graph.
Yeah,
Oh,
it
absolutely there
It
has.
shows it. That's where I like that 5-year graph because it shows you where you were and where you're going.
Right, and now that we've got almost all brand-new meters in, which is a great
Right.
job by our
Well,
team, it's
you
good.
take that project, theoretically, doing the meter project is gonna generate money and decrease costs for you down the road.
Yes,
So it
it's a
was worth it.
savings long-term, yeah.
So it's balancing those costs out of what makes sense and what doesn't. And where's the funding? The funding source is always the big thing.
One more question. Tell me something good about BSNA.
Honestly, what's out there, I think it is the best system out there for a government your size.
It helps with the audit as well.
Hands down, I will take BSNA over anything else that's out there right now.
Excellent, excellent. Because it cost a lot of money.
It costs a lot of money,
Yeah.
that it did, but in the grand scheme of things, I think once it's set up and it's being used, which Grant is
Yep.
learning it and using it, it's works. It's doing what you want because they built it for governments. It's kind of a governmental system. So you don't have a software company building an accounting system. You have a government saying, we need to build an accounting system for a government, and it's built for that. And here's all the other pieces that dovetail into it. So it all talks to each other.
Thank you. It's very nice to hear that because that's how they sold it.
Yeah.
And I kind of headed that up and they were selling it like it's the hottest thing since sliced bread. And it's nice to see down the road 5 years or whatever we've had it, that it's still the case. It was true.
Yeah.
So I'm glad to hear that.
So if you have any other, like, and this is hopefully my last question, but are there any other areas that we should kind of caution going forward? What, like, maybe some better practices, or what are the things that maybe that going into the next budget, we should really look at?
I would say, I'm gonna kind of roll it all up into kind of a big thing. We've already talked about it all, but don't overload Grant
Yes.
with 2 roles. He has come a long way. He's fixed financials compared to what you got to what you got now. So that's good. And now it's working together as a group on this budgeting process of looking at this year and looking at the future of saying, how can we afford this, and this? And when do we have the money, and starting to figure out the funding mechanisms for that now versus waiting until it hits critical mass and then going, damn, we got to do something now. So not harping on the fire truck, but it's a good example is don't wait for 5 years when they come through and say, okay, it's done and we have to replace it today. You should be planning it now and looking at it, and that includes doing budgets from now through current. And it's not a detailed budget for 5 years. It's just kind of taking, here's our departments, here's our funds, and kind of putting a little inflation factor in there. How are things gonna go? But then looking at what SMER's gonna charge you, layering in your debt payments, and seeing where it comes out of, okay, here's where we could do some things, or here's where we gotta raise some revenue, or make some cuts, or do whatever we're gonna do. But it kind of working together on that budget, not overwhelming any one person with that, is the key.
Great. Any other questions from council or anybody else up here? Okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Mike.
Do we need any action on this?
Do we need to adopt it, I think?
Yeah, I think so.
I will move, Your Honor, that we adopt the 2023 audit as presented this evening by Anderson Tech.
Support.
All right, we have a motion and support. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. Thank you, Grant, for doing that. Okay, we are now moving on to the renewal of the service support agreement with Partridge Creek Farm. So if you'd like to come up and talk, you may. Get my timer out here.
Do you mind if I?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Say something? Or I guess I forgot Sarah reserved time. I apologize. Sarah can speak and give her.
Okay.
All right. Hello and good evening, everyone. Sarah Johnson. I live at 901 North 3rd Street here in Ishpeming. Partridge Creek Farm does a lot of things, but it can really be summarized into 2 words, food security. That's what we're here to provide our community. Over 90% of the food brought to the UP is imported from elsewhere. Think about that. It's pretty wild. That means that this food is going to cost more, and we have a very vulnerable supply chain for food for our community. We're working to address this. Oftentimes, nonprofits and governments work together because nonprofits are oftentimes much more efficient at addressing and solving issues where governments otherwise need to spend their times on things like what y'all have just been talking about. Our community has a very real food insecurity issue. Some quick stats. 18% of Ishpeming's population is facing poverty and food insecurity without access to sufficient quality of food and affordable, nutritious food. Over 40% of our population is asset-limited, income-constrained, employed, which means these are folks that are living paycheck to paycheck and are forced to make impossible choices. Pay the rent or receive medical care. Pay for childcare or pay utility bills. Put gas in the car or buy some food. We're hoping that we can help support that food point. Over half of our students receive free or reduced lunch and qualify for free breakfast programs at school, meaning that they rely on school for that food. About 60% of residents in Ishpeming in a 2021 survey reported that they go to Marquette to buy groceries, which means there's a lot of money that's leaving our community. So we're here tonight to specifically talk about the community gardens that Partridge Creek Farm stewards. These were the original seeds that started Partridge Creek Farm. Since then, we've grown and we've evolved and we've started up the intergenerational farm, which has allowed us to expand our capacity incredibly, and we're getting our food into school cafeterias finally for the first time this fall. These gardens we continue to steward, but it's important to let you all know we don't profit off those gardens. We don't make any revenue off of those gardens. We just do it because it was there. We want to continue doing it. There's 3 vacant lots in this town where now community gardens stand. It provides a gathering space for community members. It provides a quality of life enhancement, and it provides food access. At all of our community garden sites, any of the beds located outside the fenced-in areas are food that anybody walking by can come and grab. I brought a basket of food with me today, which is food that I went around this afternoon to gather. This food is free and available for anybody to purchase. Some unique items, we have peaches growing at the Inspiration Orchard on the corner of York and North Street. I can't wait to go home and grill this and put it on a nice salad with some cheese. We have heirloom apples. We even have plums. There's an apricot tree out there that's not doing so well, but we're taking care of it. So hopefully in the future, we'll have some apricots. There is fresh herbs everywhere. Don't buy fresh herbs at the grocery store. Visit some of our community gardens. We have sage, thyme, really good mint that's awesome for mojitos, lemon balm. We also have cucumbers growing right at the school garden, just across from the high school and middle school. And lots of kale, which I just recently learned. The secret to eating good kale is to beat the heck out of it and get it nice and wilty. We also supplement everything here with our farm stand, which, as Kevin Corkin mentioned in the public comment, we accept 3 different food assistance programs. These carrots, these onions, and lots of cherry tomatoes are in season right now, and these are all available at the farm stand.
Okay, thank you.
I'll just say, I hope that you please consider renewing this. It was something that I believe Mayor Tonkin started with us. Thank you for your support and allowing us to do this work. It's really important, and every little bit does help us go a really long way. So thank you.
Absolutely, thank you. And I see carrots. I love carrots.
Beautiful carrots.
I also just wanted to take a moment and, I wish I would have had it with me at the last meeting, but I wanted to talk about our master plan, which was adopted in 2022. And under topic 8, quality of life, local food access was specifically identified in our master plan. And then we had a specifically identified goal to improve the health of Ishpeming residents through increased access, affordability, and consumption of local foods. Objective 8.2.1 says support community food champions such as Partridge Creek in their farm to school intergenerational farm and future initiatives aimed at bringing local food knowledge closer to the consumer. So I know that there were concerns of like, how do we separate what we're doing for Partridge Creek versus how do we separate snowbirds or other such residents who might leave in the winter? I think the big thing here is it's really an apples to orange discussion. We're talking about somebody who's providing a public service, an organization that's specifically mentioned in our master plan, which is helping us achieve goals that this council adopted in 2022. This is just a formal continuation, a carrying out of our own master plan. So I think this is something that I hopefully can put any lingering concerns to rest on. I think we're squarely in the right to do this.
Your Honor, I have no concerns. I think it's a fabulous thing. And as she just stated, Mike was on council, and it's Claudia, it's been a history, it's been built over history, not just current times. So I would move that we adopt the agreement as it's presented this evening.
I'll support that. I think I think it's a no-brainer for the city to support this. Partridge Creek Farms has done tremendous work, and I personally look forward to seeing the next 10 years. So with that said, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion passes, and proudly passes, I think. Thank you. Okay,
Next
moving.
time you bring vegetables, bring salt, please.
Yeah, sure, a carrot or a plum. May have to come find some plums. I love plums. All right, moving on, Resolution 14-2024, designation of street administrator.
Okay, so this was Craig, and we are designating Bill. This is a role that needs to be filled by the state, or for the state.
Okay.
Just naming Bill formally.
Works for me.
I would so move.
Same. Okay. Motion and support. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Okay, moving on to our last item of business. And I'll turn this over to the chief of police here, and that was to consider purchase of a new police truck using funds this year, if it is possible that it could be cheaper than foregoing it next year, as we have pushed some projects back. So, chief.
So this kind of got brought forth at the last meeting. Council discussed the possibility of doing it this year based off of some of the public improvement projects that weren't going to get done this year. So I just decided to come forward with a quote and kind of where we went. Looking at the vehicle, I can't promise you what it's going to be next year. Obviously, they always go up. This is locked in for this year. It's a M deal. I did check with other local places, but nothing was even close to being cheaper. When it comes to Elcom, which does all of our kind of outfits to vehicles, there's someone that we do have a contract with that we've used over the years. There is one other one now that is currently the last couple of years. It's up in, I believe, Houghton, that does kind of outfit police vehicles. I did get a quote for them. It was much higher than what Elcom would be.
Yeah.
And I did put together, speaking about like the 5-year plans, this truck would have been our last of the 5-year plan that we kind of started with the
agreed.
chief and kind of where we went from here years ago.
Yep.
I did put together what our vehicles are right now.
See that.
With police vehicles, when it gets close up to 90 to 100,000, you kind of lose your availability and accountability when it comes to them types of vehicles. So the hope is, once we get this vehicle, we're set for a few years. Obviously, we can't predict what's going to happen in the future with breakdowns and that. And we have had a lot of breakdowns, but I think we're in a good spot now, finally, with the Durangos. We've gotten a lot of things worked out.
Can you do, and this is one of the questions I have is, well, why a truck?
The reason I decided to go with the second truck is when we first went to truck, it was to look at because of the trails we have in our community.
Yes.
The calls that we've had, not just on trails, but just kind of off-road that we weren't able to get to based off of the vehicles we had. It made the accessibility a lot easier. Like I mentioned before, like last year, there's cases that we've had to use our personal vehicles and trucks to go on, or used old DPW vehicles to get to. I believe a truck also, when it kind of uses its life with the police department, there's more use for it within the city than one of our other police interceptors have. Like our trucks will be used, I think these trucks are built good. I mean, you're looking at 10, 15 years. So when we're done with it after 5, 6, 7 years, it can go to DPW, it can go to DDA, it can be used a lot easier than we can with our smaller vehicles. It's just been something we've used it a lot, the capability that truck has over the police interceptor, at least this last year. Price-wise, I mean,
It's right there.
they're right within thousands of each other. There's not very much difference. The gas mileage with the newer vehicles, it's the same.
Yep.
It just is more,
Versatile.
it's versatile for us and it's easier for us to use and
And we don't
came in
know
handy.
what we may do down the road. And having a truck, if we need to tow something or anything like that, we're in a better position, I would say. So,
We have had to toll, like my biggest
Yeah.
thing with the trucks is, especially with all the events we have, with the mountain biking, the off trails, it's a lot easier for me to get down the trail with the truck and bring in and out more people. It's even helped with EMS can't always get their rigs back there, or let's say we have a bed we need to put back there, a cot. We can now use the truck and the bed of the truck to get the cot out there, whereas the EMS rig's not gonna get down most of our trails.
and having ridden in all, having done ride-alongs and ridden in all of the different vehicles, there's no question that truck makes sense to me. And I guess my suggestion and motion would be to go forward with buying one this year, as prices don't go down, they go up, and that it would come out of the public improvement fund as we've pushed projects back. So that would be my motion, is to get this done this year at this price and accept this packet here. Go with Elcom for the outfitting, and so that would be my motion, would be to purchase it
I'll
this year.
support the motion with a couple of questions.
Mm-hmm.
One, I'm sure that MCOs or somebody tells you what that car has to handle.
Yep.
As far as Elcom and that, right?
Sure,
So
yeah.
there's no frills there. It's
No.
expensive, but it's all stuff that has to.
Yeah.
No, ours is the base project,
Oh,
what we
okay.
need. I mean,
Okay.
if there's no frills on that, it's basically down to the,
Gotcha.
what is necessary
And I
for
figured
us.
as much. Do we have the portable download yet for the cameras as the cars pull in? Did we ever get that?
We do not, and the reason being is we've tried working with, I don't know if it's just the way our city's built. We seem to have an issue with the Wi-Fi and the connections. We brought in numerous different people, we just can't get it to work.
Okay.
And that was the issue with the computers we had too, so that's why they're not connected to Linus for some reason. I don't know, we can't really figure out what it is, if it's the old building or just the connection. We've tried different things, it just doesn't
Could
pick
they
up.
wire an outdoor Wi-Fi thing to the police department? so it
They've
would
tried, if you
work?
look on our building, they've tried different things and it just ain't working with the connection the way it reads.
Okay.
I'm not a computer expert, so I can't tell you exactly why and why it's not.
I knew we had done a lot of research, but I never knew how it ended. So I guess we're at a point where throwing up our hands for now.
For that, I mean, we still bring in, every day we can, it downloads right to itself, so all we do is we just bring
Inside.
we just bring it in and connect it to our
Yeah,
computer that
like-
way, so. I mean, the Wi-Fi would just be more of a
Convenience.
convenience where it's not a necessity.
That's all I had, Your Honor.
Okay. So what is the total for this purchase here? Okay. Okay, yeah, I mean, I've made the motion, we've got support. Is there any other further discussion or questions?
Can you include a budget amendment for 2024's
Sure.
public improvement fund to make the purchase? And then I don't have to bring it back to you
Yeah.
later.
I'll just make so my motion's amended to include a budget amendment.
Supported as well.
Okay. All right, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Thanks.
Thank you, and I will say Bill is, DPW is gonna get our number 4. Once we get it stripped down, I'll get it over to Bill, and that's gonna still be used for what I think it's gonna be for the meter reading, so that'll help in that end, so.
Like I said, these things are gonna go up next year. We have pushed enough projects back to where this becomes logical sense, so. And we may not get it for a couple months anyway.
Yeah, we'll put the order in, it'll still be a couple months, but like I said, you obviously can't lock it in for next year. I do appreciate you taking the time to look at it and making that change. So that should conclude our 5-year plan when it comes to our vehicles.
Well done, chief, we appreciate it. And now on to our next 5-year.
Thank you.
Support.
All right, motion to adjourn, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, opposed? Motion passes.